Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, anywhere you are in the world. It's the Pro-Unitate podcast once again, bringing you delightful messages, value-driven conversations for your pleasant listening and enjoyment. Choma is here as usual, helping me to run the podcast. And our guest today is an esteemed guest. He is the global president of the Federal Government College Sokoto Old Students Association. Mike Chukwu is, of course, the founder and chief executive of Assetswise Capital Limited, a private equity firm founded since 2007. He was the founding group managing director, chief executive officer of Spring Bank PLC. This was between 2005 and 2007. He has also been the group managing director and chief executive officer of Guardian. Is this the Guardian Express Bank PLC? This was before he moved on to the Spring Bank. He was the executive chairman of Ebonyi State Internal Revenue Board between 2019 and 2020, working with the government of Ebonyi State. I think Ebonyi State is a fairly new state. I think that must have been under the leadership of Engineer Omoahi, if I remember correctly. Please. Yes, very productive gentleman, Engineer Omoahi was. Mike attended FGC Sokoto between 1975 and 1980, where he finished with a grade 1 distinction. He comes from a family of proud Ososans. Most of his siblings have been to literally almost every unity school you can name. I saw one just now, Ipetomodu. I don't know where that is. FGGC Ipetomodu. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And then there's
Ipetomodu, yes, Osun State.
Thank you. And then there's Bakuri. There's Sokoto again, Kaduna, and Queen's College even. He's a proud Ososan. We're going to give him a few minutes to introduce himself. Nobody can introduce him better than himself. And he will give us a bit of background in his youth and how he grew up. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much. And thank you, David and Choma, for this opportunity of being on this podcast. I think you've covered the most essential points about me. I think I only just add, I was born in the mid-60s, 1964, February 14th, which was a Valentine's Day for lovers. It was also Eid al-Maulud for Muslims in 1964. Of course, I was born in Lagos. My father at that time was working in Lagos for the federal government, Federal Ministry of Education. And as soon as the Civil War started, we moved down to the east, first to Port Harcourt, and later on to the more the hinterland of what was then Biafra. After the Civil War, I started my primary school in Abia State. My father was working for government, so he was frequently on the move. So I started my primary school in Abia State in Akwete in 1970. In 71, I moved to Abakaliki because he was transferred to Abakaliki. In 72, we moved to Oka because he was transferred to Oka. And then in 1974, he rejoined the federal service, and then once he rejoined the federal service, he was posted to Kogi State, or rather, Kwara State at that time. It was actually Kwara State, a town called Kaba, but which is today in Kogi State. And that was where I finished primary school in 1975. And then from there, I got admission to FGC Sokoto, where I was between 1975 and 1980. I now proceeded to University of Nigeria in Nsukka, where I did a degree in political science between 1980 and 1984. Well, the reason why I studied political science is something we'll probably have time for maybe on another occasion, but there was an interesting story to my decision to study political science. Having now completed my studies in political science, I decided to now go into accounting, and I joined Pricewaterhouse. At that time, it was Pricewaterhouse before it merged with Coopers and Lebrand to become PricewaterhouseCoopers in the 90s. But in 1985, it was Pricewaterhouse. I joined as an audit trainee, and within 3 years, I completed my studies and qualified as a chartered accountant in 1988. And then thereafter, I moved into banking in 1989, joined Fidelity Bank, where I was assistant financial controller. And then I worked in a number of other banks apart from Fidelity. I was financial controller of Citizens Bank in 1990, but the bank is now defunct. And then in 1996, I joined FCIB again as the financial controller. And then I moved over to UBA, where I was assistant general manager between 1998 and 1997 and 1999. In 2001, I was appointed the group CEO of Garden Express Bank. And if you remember, in 2004, Soludo, who was the CBN governor at that time, mandated the consolidation of the banking industry. So it fell to me to merge 6 banks, to form Spring Bank. And I emerged as the pioneer CEO of Spring Bank. What is remaining after I left office in 2007, and since then I've been running my own private equity firm. And then I'm also involved in other things that keep me busy. I lecture at the Institute of Directors. I lecture at Garden City Premier Business School in Port Harcourt. I do things in the public space, in the volunteering space. I have served as National Financial Secretary of USOSA between 2012 and 2016. I have also served as the chairman of that's FC Sokoto Alumni Association in Lagos. And last year I was elected the global president. So that's about all. I'm happily married. I believe I'm happily married with 4 children, 4 biological children.
Excellent. It's he's giving us everything apart from one special thing, which maybe he's modest enough not to let us know. He was the first prize award winner in the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, the foundation examinations of November 1986. That's when he qualified as an associate. And in 1988, and was admitted fellow of the Institute in 1998. I thought I'll plug that gap so that they know.
Thank you very much.
So that they know exactly. Anything financial, you know who to go to. Don't forget the name of his firm. It's called Assetswise Capital Limited. So literally, you've spent all your time basically in the financial sector. A bit of politics, I suppose. I'm interested in that story about you reading politics in Nsukka. We'll come to that in a moment. Let's talk about Sokoto, FGC Sokoto. 60 years very shortly. I'm sure you'll tell us a bit about the plans, but why Sokoto? Why did you from the east move all the way to Sokoto State? And why was it safe enough at that time that you were comfortable enough to go up north?
I didn't hear the last part of the question, please.
I said, why was it comfortable for you at that time, leaving the East and going all the way up north to a region where you had never been before. Tell us about that experience. Tell us why Sokoto.
Okay, maybe I will have to start from my first brother who went to FCC Sokoto. In 1965, my eldest brother went to King's College. You know, as I said, in the 60s, my father was working for the federal government in Lagos.
Yes.
So my eldest brother, who is late now, Professor Austin Chukwu, attended King's College in 1965. In 1966, the federal government decided to set up 3 federal government colleges, one in Sokoto, one in Warri, and one in Okposi. So my second brother, called Dominic, decided out of a sense of adventure to apply to FGC Sokoto. So they were in the pioneer set. They were in the pioneer class of 1966. In 1967, when the Civil War started, those of them who were from the eastern part of the country were shipped for their safety. Were shipped away from Sokoto to Okposi. At that time, that was the 3rd federal government college, apart from Sokoto and Warri. In 1970, of course, he couldn't continue his studies during the Civil War. In 1970, when the Civil War ended, he wrote a letter to his classmates who were at that time in Form 5 in Sokoto. You know, after the Civil War, my father decided to register him in a state school in East Central State, as it was at that time. And because he had lost some years due to the Civil War, he was now in Form 3. But he now wrote a letter to his classmates who were in their final year in FCC Sokoto, and they were quite pleasantly surprised to learn that he was still alive, because, of course, you know, there were fears that many people may have died during the Civil War, including him. So when he wrote that letter, his classmates mobilized. You know, the classmates were led by Suliabu. I don't know whether you have heard about Suliabu. He was a journalist, you know, a reputable journalist, and he retired. He will be in his 70s now. So his classmates went to the principal, a white man, and said they want my brother back in Sokoto. And they now contributed money.
Wow.
And sent to him. And this was 1970. If you know, the wounds of the war were still fresh. So when they sent the money and the letter to him, and he went to my dad, my father said, well, if your classmates say they want you, then you have to go. So he went back to Sokoto in 1970 to now resume in Form 3. At that time, his classmates were in Form 5. And then he now eventually completed O-levels in 1972, and then went back again for A-levels in 73, 74. So, you know, in my family, Sokoto then became synonymous with charity, with a good place to be in, such that when my 3rd brother was to go to secondary school in 1973, Sokoto just became the natural choice. So He applied. And then in 1974, when my 4th brother, who many of you will know, Professor Chukwu, who was Minister of Health, also decided to go to secondary school, Sokoto became the natural choice. And when it was my time in 1975, we all decided that Sokoto was where to be, because they had shown love to us. And I think this story actually reflects, you know, embodies the spirit of the unity schools, where, irrespective of where you find yourself in the country, you should feel at home. And that is, you know, that's just the story of what took me to Sokoto.
Yes, it was a united experience. Whether you were from the south, whether you were from the east, whether you were from the southeast, we could move everywhere. You had no fear of getting into transportation, spending hours on the road to get to Sokoto. And Sokoto, I suppose, imbibed an experience in you. Give us one particular unique experience in Sokoto that probably made you who you are now.
There are so many stories. I think, let me start from the story of resilience. At the time I went to Sokoto, in 1975. As I said to you, my father had rejoined the federal service and he had been posted to Kaba in Kwara State at that time. Kaba is now in Kogi State. And for me to make that journey to Sokoto, I had to travel from Kaba to Ilorin. You know, my parents took me to Ilorin and then I had to join the train. I remember very well, it was on a Wednesday night. And then we traveled by train from Ilorin to Zaria, you know, over a period of 24 hours.
Wow.
And we got to Zaria at 10 p.m. the following day. We entered the train at 10 p.m. on Wednesday, got to Zaria at 10 p.m. on Thursday. Of course, there were other students. You know, the school had taken the extra caution of reserving a coach, you know, for students of FGC Sokoto. So we got to Zaria 10 p.m. the following day and immediately joined the vehicle going to Sokoto. I mean, when I look back, we traveled all through the night, you know, from Zaria, and we got to Sokoto around 4 a.m. in the morning. We didn't fear anything. To our surprise, in the middle of nowhere, the driver would stop maybe around 1 a.m. He stopped somewhere in the middle of nowhere that he needed to pray. And we all came down, students, we all alighted from the bus to stretch our legs, and nobody was afraid. So that was my first experience of Sokoto as a place where you were taught to, as a young person, I was 11 years old at that time, to look after yourself, establish some sense of independence. So when you say, who am I today? The spirit of independence came to me early as a young 11-year-old when I had to travel that kind of long distance. But the second attribute was that I now learned to trust people. Today, most of my friends are people who are not from my own part of the country because we now formed a bond of friendship, a spirit of friendship, a spirit of camaraderie, which has remained with us 50 years afterwards. Sokoto was a very, very good environment to learn in. At the time we got there, we still had a white principal, Mr. Harwood, and his wife was also a teacher in the school, Mrs. Margaret Harwood. Our teaching faculty at that time, about 1/3 were people from Europe, you know, white from England, from America, from Scotland, from Ireland. Then we had another third who were Asians, you know, Pakistanis and Indians. And then perhaps only about a third were Nigerians. So it was like an international school at that time.
Right.
We were exposed to international standards, and the rigorous training reflected the standards of people who came from Europe. The principal was a white man. And as I said, most of the heads of departments were expatriates. I'm not saying that we do not have respect for Nigerians. Nigerians are equally good, but I'm only saying that at that time, the privilege we had of being exposed to an international faculty meant that our standards were substantially international. And I think that is something that has stayed with me today. The constant move to realize excellence in all facets, you know, whether it is in academics or whether it is in my workplace or even in terms of my ethics and personal standards. They reflect those kind of standards that one imbibed early in the day in Sokoto. The school rules were very, very, the number one school rule, I will never forget it. The number one school rule was that a breach of common sense is a breach of school rules. So when you read it, it's an omnibus kind of school rule, which is like, we expect you to use your common sense at all times. And even in my personal life, I reflect on, does this thing make sense before I do it?
Right.
So those were some of the kind of influences one received by going to Sokoto.
Chioma, the topic of resilience came up again. That was the very first thing Mike said when I asked him about unique experiences from FGC Sokoto.
Yes.
Yes, so Chioma, go on.
I'm sorry, I don't know how far what I missed. Because
apart from his experiences as a young man, 11-year-old, traveling to Sokoto, and the impact that Sokoto made on him, you haven't missed anything else. So if you want to go from there.
So you haven't asked the question I've been curious about.
Go on.
I'm kind of curious what took him to numbers, because he had mentioned. Yes, so
well, I think I should.
Yes, I need to know what took you to numbers.
I think I should speak to it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, this is what happened actually, as a matter of fact. In 1979, okay, in 1978, when I was going to Form 4, our school had the system, and I think it was the same in all the federal government colleges, where you choose your subjects in Form 4. And in Form 4, you are required to choose either Art Maths or Literature, History or Physics, Chemistry or Fine Arts. I think Biology stood on its own, you know. Now, I was doing equally well in science subjects as well as in art subjects. But the fad at that time, what was recognized among people of my generation, was that you needed to be either a doctor, an engineer, a scientist. So just like every person of my generation, I chose maths, physics, chemistry, biology, and all the science subjects. And actually what I had planned to study was architecture. That was my youthful fancy at that time. I just wanted to be an architect. Now, when we were going home for the long vacation after our Form 3, the school gave us forms to take back to our parents, and my father was required to choose what he thought I should do. So my father filled his own subjects, and instead of physics, he put history. Instead of art maths, he put literature. Instead of literature, history, you know, those subjects that now made it, you know, that pushed me to the arts area. Now, my father wanted me to fulfill a dream he didn't fulfill for himself. My father was sponsored in the 50s to the United Kingdom to do a degree in education. And after that, if he had his way, he wanted to stay on and study law. But he went on a scholarship, and as soon as the education scholarship expired, he had to come back to Nigeria. Now, when he had his own children, my eldest brother, of course, had decided to study English. But other than him, the second brother went in for engineering. My third brother went in for pharmacy. My fourth brother went in for medicine. And he wanted someone to read law. And he thought I was going to be the person. So he selected art courses for me. So when I went back to school, we had a guidance and counseling teacher who brought out the two, what I had filled and what my parents had filled, and said, look, your father wants you to study history, literature, Bible knowledge, and rest of them. You want to study maths, physics, chemistry, blah, 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 blah. The good thing is that you're doing well in both sides. But I think you should listen to your dad. So I accepted the advice of the guidance and counsel teacher and registered for history, literature, BK, geography, economics. So that made me an arts student. In 1979, in 1980, when we were writing JAM, I was alone in Sokoto when I had to fill my form for JAM. During this period, I had, you know, among my friends and peers, we were always talking about what lawyers do. And at that time, you know, a lot of my friends would talk about their uncles who are lawyers, and they would say you have to belong to one court or occultic group, you have to belong to Boni, you have to carry jazz to the court. You know, those are the kind of things that discourage me from law. And I just say, this is not what I want to do. But here I was in Sokoto, and I'm now required to choose subjects. And with the subject combinations I had chosen, if I said I didn't want to do law, what else could I do? This was 1979, 1980. 1979, politics had returned to Nigeria. Nigeria had gone back to the Second Republic. And that was when we had MPN, Shehu Shagari, AWO, UPN, ZIG, MPP. And I said, look, this political science, maybe it will help me understand what these guys are doing. Maybe I even thought it would make me a politician. So I entered for political science, and I remember when my results came out, my dad went to check the results and came back and said he didn't see my name. And I said, where did you check? He said, I checked on that law. I said, no, I didn't put law. I put political science. So the next day he went back. I came back. I said, sure, your name is there, top on the list. Then he was asking me, why did you? I told him all the stories why I don't want to do law. I was 16 years old. And he said, well, the good thing is that you are still young. Go in and read political science. After 4 years, maybe you will have matured more. And then you will see the wisdom in reading law. The major advantage in reading law, according to my dad, was you will be self-employed. You can stand on your own. So I went off to Nsukka and I was happy to read political science. And then by the time I was finishing the course, I had met a couple of friends. There was one particular friend who was reading economics. He was 1 year ahead of us. And he kept talking about his dreams after Nsukka, that after Nsukka, he wanted to be a chartered accountant. And then he now said, if he becomes a chartered accountant, he'll be self-employed. And he just registered. Okay, this is the self-employment my dad was talking about.
Yes.
So I made up my mind I was going to go through that same route. And when we were finishing youth service, I saw the adverts from KPMG, Pricewaterhouse. I applied. It was a very competitive examination. Over 5,000 of us, they took only 12. People from different backgrounds. We have people who read engineering, people who read accounting, people who read economics, people who read statistics. Some of the people who were in my set in Pricewaterhouse, someone like Carol Anyang, who later on became DMD of Diamond Bank. She read statistics. She had a first class in statistics. And so many others. So that is what brought me to accounting. And interestingly, as I was finishing my youth service, my father had gone to Unilag to buy direct entry law.
Already, he really wanted law.
I surprised him again. I said, "Sorry, Dad, I have got this job." Yeah, he really wanted, but I think he should be consoled in his grave. He has grandchildren who have read law now, so
brilliant. The dream was
eventually
achieved. Excellent. That's what we like to hear. So for the audience, I apologize. It looks like Chioma has problems with her connections, unfortunately. She'll come back at some point. I think it's the internet not being stable where she is. Let's talk a bit about USOSA. You held a position with them for a period. What was the interest in USOSA? These alumni activities are selfless. You don't get paid for it. So what drove, what was the drive to want to partake in this association to give back?
Okay, there is a historical angle, and then of course, like you said, there is that angle that speaks to my feeling, my desire to give back. The historical angle is people think that USOSA just came out from nowhere. In the 1970s, we had USOSA, but at that time it was called Federal Government Colleges Old Students Association, FEGO-COLOSA, that was the name.
Right.
I remember in 1980, when I went to Nsukka, we had FEGO-COLOSA, which was an umbrella for students from all the unity schools. People like us were from Sokoto, we had people from Ilorin, we had people from Enugu, we had people from King's College. And as students at Nsukka, we used to come together, do meetings and have a party. In fact, at that time at Nsukka, everybody looked forward to the FEGO-COLOSA Ebo, because it used to be the main Ebo, even chicks, everybody wants to come for that Ebo, So we always had a FEGO-COLOSA. Then when I left school and I came to Lagos, FEGO-COLOSA still existed, but what was more, what was stronger at that time was FEGO-COSOSA, that's Sokoto Old Students Association. And I remember at that time, even as a young graduate who had just started work in Lagos, we had our seniors who were senior managers in banks. One or two were in NNPC. One was in the Federal Airports Authority. And I remember the one in FAN used to host us at the airport at Bretla. Mohammed Airport every last Sunday of the month. And as a young person, because I had 2 or 3 elder brothers who were already in Lagos before me and who used to attend those meetings, I was always going with them. And as a young graduate at that time, we were the errand boys. You know, I remember in 1991 when we had our 25th, my school's 25th anniversary. I volunteered. I was working in Fidelity Bank at that time. I volunteered and I was among those who went around. There was no online transfer at that time. If you wanted to make a payment, the person will issue you a check. So I volunteered. I had to go to the MPC, went to UBA, went to some other places where we had our own students to go and pick up checks and all that. So there, I grew into it as it were. When I was working for a long time, of course, my engagement was with Federal Government College Sokoto Old Students Association, because USOSA or if we go closer, it went down for a while until a few people like Albert Tukumagba now decided to resuscitate it under Pro-Unitate Forum. That was the best name, Pro-Unitate Forum. What actually ignited my interest in USOSA was that, if you remember, in 2005, 2006, Ezekwesili, Dr. Ngozi Ezekwesili, Obi Ezekwesili, was the Minister of Education. And if you remember at that time, they had come up with a policy where they decided that they were going to privatize or concession the federal government colleges, the unity schools. And Albert Tukumagba, having learned that I went to a federal government college, approached me. I was still in the bank at that time. And he said, look, we have to join forces to save the federal government colleges. We were afraid that if we didn't step in, people who didn't know about the motivation, the spirit, the history, the legacy of those schools will probably buy over the schools, and they'll take it in a direction we won't be happy about. So he spoke to me, and I remember following that conversation, I raised 10 million at that time for the association.
Wow.
I raised 10 million in my capacity as the MD of Garden Express Bank. I, Imokede, and late Herbert, we raised 10 million from Access Bank.
Wow.
The 20 million was what was used to fight the fight. You know, I say we because I got involved. I was still in the bank, but I got involved. We were going for meetings in Abuja. And then we put up a case that we wanted to take over the schools. We said to Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili that if people must concession it, we all students are ready to take over the schools. So they asked us to go and bring feasibility studies. Nexin was commissioned. I'm sure you know Nexin. I'm trying to remember the name of this guy. I remember his name. You know, he went to FCC Okiwe. Was also an old student. So Albert Kumaba commissioned him with the money that we had provided to write feasibility studies for the 104 schools. So that was what we submitted to the ministry. And somewhere along the line, the minister gave us a hint that there were political pressures, you know, all the senators, all the members of House, ministers, everybody was looking forward to grabbing one school or the other school for themselves. That there was pressure, so that she could give us a certain assurance that 50% of the schools will be given to us as USOSA, and then the other 50% will go to all the other interests, other stakeholders. So we worked on it, and I remember going for meetings in Abuja. I joined 1 or 2 of the technical committees. So if you look at it from at that point, it was an act of self-preservation. You know, we needed to act to preserve the schools as we knew them, as we went through them, the experiences we got, the history, the legacy. We were determined to preserve it, and that was the fight we put up. Because I was in banking at that time, I didn't have enough time to participate, you know, in running of the association. But I was always called in for meetings. We were holding a number of meetings in Albert Tukumaba's house in Ikoyi. I can call some of the names of people who are always there. I mean, Albert was always there. Aisha Oyebode was always there. This lady, Bosse from FGGC Benin. There was this guy from King's College. A few of us, maybe 10, 11, 12 of us. And then when we now go to Abuja, we will link up with people like Ini Akpabio, people like from Ilorin, Ayo Joseph, So we eventually got the school saved because we put up a fight. But eventually, when Biaradua came into office, they decided to suspend that or stop that process of privatizing the school. And it was about that same time that I left my work as a banker. And I remember they put me under pressure to come in, having shown sufficient interest in the affairs of the institution. So I agreed to serve in 2012 as a financial secretary, which I served under DICO, not DICO, the Kudu, sorry. See, names are escaping me. Anyway, yeah. I served with the president who became president after Albert from 12 to 16. And then I now decided to step down to focus on other things.
Right.
So my interest is one, I was born into that situation of being involved in FGCs, but more importantly, I got intimately involved because we needed to act to save the schools at a time. But today, we are at that point where each of us who has benefited sufficiently, immensely from attending fragment colleges are worried about the future of those schools. Now that I'm president of FGC Sokoto Students Association, I visited my school late last year, and I can say to you that I was thoroughly distressed by the situation I met, deterioration in physical infrastructure, deterioration in the quality of learning, deterioration in the environment, deterioration in the spirit of the school. When I say the spirit of the school, it's no longer the school some of us attended. And I'm sure it's not peculiar to Sokoto. In our time, all the regions, all the states were fairly equally represented in the school. In Sokoto at that time, you might say we were about 96. I went to Sokoto when we had 12 states in Nigeria. I came from East Central State at that time. And Sokoto was in Northwestern State at that time. Almost all the states had like 6 or 7 or 8 students. So we had some sense of balance. We had some sense of exposure to cultures, to people from all parts of the country. Today, most of those schools are now, grounds of inbreeding, 90% of the staff are from that area. 90% of the students are also from that area. It no longer reflects the national culture that some of us met. So some of us are concerned about the fact that our unity schools, which we were beneficiaries of, are no longer fulfilling any of the two reasons why they were established. One, they were established to promote unity.
Yes.
But more importantly, they were also established to be models of excellence. Today, they're not fulfilling any of those two missions. And we're asking ourselves, what can we do in our little corners as school students to revive the traditions of the schools and possibly reorientate the schools and enable them to rejuvenate the schools so that we can go back to the legacy that we're coming from.
I just want to quickly drop in there. You mentioned Ayo Joseph. He has been on this podcast. He was, I think, on episode 3 or episode 4. Similar demeanor like yourself, a well-read gentleman. We were happy to have him on the podcast. With regards to what you've said, it's a new perspective to how USOSA was founded, how USOSA was born. Our first earlier episodes was dedicated to the origins of USOSA. We heard about Albert Okumagba. We had the current President General, Michael Magaji. There was a fellow from FGC, Wari Dauda Ilea. He's been on the platform as well. So it's a very new perspective to how the unities, how USOSA was formed. I'm very concerned, like yourself, with the quality of the education in unity schools and the, should we call it degradation of the quality and then of the schools themselves. I'm not going to attribute blame. Everybody knows how to attribute blames. What we do here is to prefer and seek solutions. I think that's what the current leadership are doing, meeting with the Ministry of Education, trying to revive these old traditions that we had, and hopefully, again, like you said, the reorientation of the people with good leadership, which I believe we have, with the quality of people who went to these unity schools when, quote unquote, they were serving the real purpose. I think we can all come together and do things in a collective. Now, I'm not trying to flog Alumni Hub. I have no desire to flog Alumni Hub. However, it's a unique tool that can bring us all together in one place. Then, if there's a fundraiser, let's assume a 10 billion naira fundraiser, collectively, to support what the Education Ministry is doing, or to support what USOSA is doing, I'm sure we will make impacts. It will only take time. These are solutions I see in my vision, you know. So hopefully, Choma.
Yeah, yes, so what he said about the state of the unity schools, when I hear that, I always believe it's a reflection of our society. So it's not just unique to the unity school. So why would somebody not want to send their child to Sokoto? Those are the things that we need to be looking at, like security issues. And I'm sure, Mike, you would not want to send any of your children to the school that you went to because of the security issues and all. So beyond USOSA trying, I believe that we need to get to a point where we sit at policy making so that we take it from the federal government side. Because we can only, I know a lot of work that my school is doing is even easier for us in the South, that people still come from around the neighboring states. But I can imagine what Sokoto is now. So I'm just thinking, what if we look at it from a point where we get to sit at the table where the policies are made that will actually put the unity schools back to what it's supposed to be, as opposed to just USOSA maybe bringing money together and trying to do some work.
Different perspectives. There's no wrong. There's always right. Go on, Mike. Go on. You were going to say something.
Yes, Choma, you are absolutely right. Yes, you're absolutely right, which is actually one. You know, you're absolutely right, Choma. Part of the tragedy for the unity schools today is the fact that we have not had a regeneration. You know, if you look at most very proud alma maters everywhere in the world, you find a father goes to the school, he ensures his son goes to that same school, and it becomes something that it passes on from generation to generation. Today, we are at a point where most of us, I'm sure if you did a survey, perhaps 80-90% of USOSANs are not even, they have not allowed their own children to get the benefit of the kind of education they got. And for me, that's a tragedy, because assuming we had USOSANs who are still going for PTA meetings, for example. You know, the 5 or 6 years ago, one of my sons was posted to Sokoto State for NYSC. I had no inhibitions asking him to go, you know, because when he came to me, I said, sure. It was a very sweet coincidence for me. So all I did was I called my one of my classmates in Sokoto, who at that time was a commissioner in the state, Hassan Mashido. His late father was a sultan before this one. So I called him and I said, my son is coming to Sokoto. You guys take care of him. And I was quite happy when my son told me that he came to the camp to see him, which is the spirit, the fact that I sent him to Sokoto and immediately he has a father, as it were, a foster father in Sokoto. But the funniest thing, after camp, I just, after like a month, all of a sudden I saw him in Lagos and I said, come, what are you doing here? He said, I have redeployed. I said, how? Why? He said, my mom said because of the security situation that she can't bear the pains of a possible loss of a son, in the insecurity enough. And the mother just made the arrangement behind me because they knew I would say no, My attitude was that you just go there. Yeah, just like I was sent, for me, I have things to say about it, that I learned culture, traditions of those people in those areas, their foods, their language. I've made friends there. I can go to any part of Nigeria and I live and I can, just the way I called my friend and said, my son is coming. That's the way you make friends, So yes. But between him and his mom, they redeployed him to Lagos, So where we are today in the country, I think the other challenge is how many of our old students are teachers. How many of them have gone back into the federal government college system? Again, a very negligible number. I would have wished that the principal of my school, for example, was an old student. And that, again, is something that, in my opinion, is one of the things that has actually diluted the culture of the federal government colleges. Yes. When the first set of federal government colleges were set up, you will find there was this linkage because they shared common history, because of teachers who moved from one school to the other, and they kept on passing the culture and the practices, and therefore we had a common thread. Now, I think the first set of principals, of the schools, who were appointed in the 70s, because the new generation, the second generation of schools after the first set, Sokoto, Warri, and Okposi in 1966, in 1973-74, we had the second set, which included schools like Ilorin, Ikote, Port Harcourt, Calabar, and so on and so forth. The principal of those schools, the second set of schools, came from the first set of schools. Mm-hmm. And therefore, they maintained a certain consistency in terms of cultural practices. But today, because of the government policy, which seems to promote recruitment of teachers from the environment where the school is situated, you now have people who did not pass through the federal government colleges system. Now, so
we're losing Mike. He has to say this because this is a preferred solution. Mike, you have to go back. You have to go back a bit. Sorry. Your line was breaking up.
Without mentioning names, I know when I visited Sokoto and we had a conversation, there was something that, okay, what I was saying is that there was something that was told me, when I visited Sokoto, about a former principal, not a current one, something he did, which...
Oh dear. Chioma, if you can hear me again,
I can hear you.
Network issues, I suppose.
Yeah.
That was there was a solution exactly in what he was saying.
Okay, I think I went up temporarily.
Yes, but I need you to please rewind. Go back to where you started from, where you said, because that's a solution. The first generation were principals of the second generation. So how can we aid that to develop a solution?
Yeah, we need to get back to government policy. As I said today, government policy says that the principal of the school should be someone from that neighborhood.
Right.
There's a catchment policy. We need to challenge that policy if we decide to act in concert. We need to challenge it. Of course, the security situation has changed. So it's possible that today if you ask certain principals to move from, let's say, Lagos to Maiduguri, he may not, certain teachers may not be willing. But the point I'm making is that we have teachers who have come from state schools, who have come from non-federal government college environments, and who have suddenly become principal. And they're not used to our culture. They're not used to the way federal government colleges operate. They're not used to the spirit. And, I don't want to mention a specific name, but I'm saying there was a principal who I was told a story of what happened. And I said, sorry, this is not the spirit of federal government colleges. Why did this principal do it? And then when I now did a search on his background, he came from a state school. Wow. Okay, so he came with certain prejudices. He came with certain notions, about people who come from this part of the country, who come from this other part. Whereas, to mention a few, for example, the first principal of Ilorin came from Sokoto. Second principal of Udobolu came from Sokoto. These are some of the people I know. The first principal of Sokoto came from King's College. And if you trace it, the one principal in Okigwe came from Sokoto. I'm talking about those I know. The principal of Sokoto, when he left Sokoto, he went to Kaduna. Mr. Harwood, he went to Kaduna in 1977. So they can ensure some commonality, some common practices as they move from one school to the other school. Something that reflects the spirit of USOSA. But I'm saying that increasingly, as you move from one federal college to the other federal college, you find that there has been so much dilution in what I consider the culture of USOSA, in what I consider the culture of federal government colleges, due to the introduction of people who were not groomed in the federal government colleges system. Now, can we change it? It's something that requires political action, and which is why I think we have some, if you like, we have some leverage. We have our people in very, very good positions. The third person in this country, the Senate president, is a USOSAN. The Chief Justice, I'm told, is also a USOSAN. Ministers, you can name so many. You can name so many governors. You can name people in very high places who can influence. So our strategy should be to engage with those people to get them sufficiently interested. But the tragedy is that many of those people have since moved on, just as many USOSANs have since moved on. Many USOSANs have their children in schools outside Nigeria, and those who are in Nigeria have their wards and children in private schools. So USOSA is now, federal government colleges and USOSA is no longer of primary interest to them. They may have some sentimental attachment to the school that they attended, but from a practical point of view of what serves their interest of their family today, many of them have moved on to private schools and taking their children and wards abroad. So it's going to be a major challenge to reignite interest of people who are holding key positions in government so they can support us in that mission of reclaiming the glory of the federal government colleges.
Again, that's the key word. Revive their interest. This is where the value is. Hopefully we can. I understand the leadership, the current leadership, are working towards exactly the solutions that you're preferring. The President General, Michael Magaji, under his leadership, is in constant communication with the Ministry of Education, and I also believe with some of these USOSANs in government. Hopefully we get there. Time is of the essence. Again, 1 hour soon comes and goes. Please tell us what, if there are any plans for the 60th anniversary of FGC Sokoto, and what you want the audience in diaspora to do to support.
Thank you very much. FGC Sokoto, we pride ourselves as the first federal government college other than the King's College and Queen's College. The school was established February 1966, and that means that February 2026 will make us 60 years. We plan to celebrate that milestone. Is monumental. It's a major achievement that the school has survived and has grown in many ways, in terms of numbers, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of presence. But more importantly, it's also an opportunity to reflect on our story, to look at areas where we've done well and to see lessons we can learn, and also reflect on areas where we've not done so well. Reflect on things that we could have done, this group could have done better, and see how we can, going forward, make appropriate amends in those areas. Then it's also an opportunity for giving back. So one of the things we're hoping to do is to take the opportunity of the anniversary to commission a few projects by alumni. We are undertaking a few projects, and some of those projects are not necessarily infrastructural projects. Some of them are projects that are directed at reclaiming the academic glories of the school. So, for example, in the past 10 years or thereabouts, the school has not had a prize-giving day. These are some of the school traditions which we all look forward to. The prize-giving day, when we have visitors, speeches are made, excellence is recognized, and people are looking forward to that day. So imagine that in 10 years that hasn't happened. It's a sad story for a school like FCIB Sokoto. So we want to get some of those activities. But of course, it's going to be an opportunity for reunion, which is a social aspect. There are people who are looking forward to it because there are friends who have not seen themselves in decades, in years. There are friends who are looking forward to reconnecting. There are people who are looking forward to the fun. We are hoping to make it a fun celebration. Now, the plan is that most of the activities will be done in the school in Sokoto. But because we also realize that there are some people in government and some alumni whose interests may not be excited if all the activities are done in Sokoto, we plan to do one or two of the events in Abuja. We plan to have an anniversary lecture in Abuja, as well as a dinner. But the major highlight of the programs will be done in Sokoto. We will have social activities, we'll have academic activities, then we'll have recognition of staff and alumni who have contributed immensely to the growth of the school and to the growth of the association. We will have activities. We plan to host events that would promote academic excellence. For example, I've mentioned the prize giving day to be part of the event. So it's going to be like a one-week program in Sokoto and a day in Abuja. So we look forward to getting all members of ISOSA to be behind us. A story of Sokoto is a story of ISOSA, and we'll be very, very delighted and pleased to see ISOSA support us. But we'll be, starting from next month, we'll go on an active campaign of publicity to rev up the engine about what we plan to do on February 2026. We have so many of our alumni who are holding, or who have held and who are holding important positions in government. We're hoping to reach out to them. We've reached out to many of them already, and we're hoping they will be the spearheads of the efforts we are going to make for the celebration. So with what we have in our kitty, we believe it to be fun-filled and, more importantly, to be productive.
Excellent. I hope we are invited.
David,
Chioma,
I have a question, though. I'm going to ask the same question I asked Ori, because I see that most of the older OSAs are structured, and the younger OSAs are struggling a bit in the association. Is there a plan to at least adopt an OSA and help them grow? Because I see a lot of young schools who are members of USOSA who needs to be handheld to, put structure. Does Sokoto have such plan?
We will be pleased to assist. I know in the past we have, in an informal way, on an informal basis, provided some support to FGGC, Guzo. We have met with them when at the time they were trying to start, and we, gave them certain advice on how to go about organizing and all that. But we'll be happy. It's something we have actually canvassed. I personally have canvassed that program under the auspices of USOSA, where the younger schools. I remember, I think when I was in office as National Financial Secretary, interestingly, when I served as Financial Secretary, The current president was the assistant policy secretary in that same administration.
Wow.
And then the previous president general,
Lawrence.
all his name for me.
Chief
Lawrence, yes, Lawrence
Wilbur.
Wilbert. Lawrence was my assistant, was my deputy. He was the assistant financial secretary when I served as a financial secretary. So we all worked together. So it's something we have canvassed in the past, that the older associations, one, we have people who are more experienced in, old students, alumni affairs, and more importantly, we have people who are more established in industry, in government. So we can, I think USOSA can have a policy, a program rather, of attaching the younger schools, particularly those ones that are not yet well formed. They don't have associations that are well formed, or they are struggling, or they are not even yet in the embrace of USOSA. We can reach out to them and help them to organize and support them initially. I think it's something USOSA should promote.
Thank you.
I'm sure you guys are doing that already, aren't you? If you are not, then I think
formalize it and do it like he said, like a program, proper program. It's been informal. This is me. I always beg for that. So now I'm going to try and formalize it.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. It's been an hour of value. There's no doubt our conversation today has been full of value. There's a lot to learn, a lot you can learn by listening to this podcast. For those who don't know, we are on YouTube, the Pro-Unitate YouTube channel, the TNN YouTube channel. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. The links will flow below this podcast. Please go and watch our podcasts. For young USOSANs, it's not easy to get a personality like Mike to sit down for an hour to give value. These are very busy Nigerians who have served the nation, served their states. So take time out to gain the value and the experience. Again, the links will flow at the bottom. Don't forget to share, like. With every subscription, we intend to grow the platform. That was why it was created, to have personalities like Mike come and share value with our audiences, so that USOSANs will know that we are not only unique, we are probably in line to be able to deliver quality for our motherland, Nigeria, that we love so dearly. Again, I keep reiterating, I understand that the president is now a honorary King's College USOSAN. So we seek him to come, listen to us, and see if there's a policy that can be implemented under the leadership of Michael Magaji to carry USOSA forward. We're grateful for your time, Mike. Chioma, thank you. I'll give Chioma a minute, then we'll give the last word of the day to Mike.
Thank you very much, so Mike. Thank you for joining us in this episode. Thank you, TNN. Of course, this collaboration, I cannot equate the value that it drives for USOSA, especially having these success stories from our own. So thank you very much, David. And so I'm looking forward to going to Sokoto. I've never been. Maybe this 6 years is going to take me to Sokoto.
Absolutely.
We'll be delighted to have you.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike, you can have the last.
We'll be delighted to have you. Yes, thank you so very much. I must express my gratitude for being invited to be on this podcast. It's been 1 hour of excitement for me as well. And to all of us who are USOSANs, I think we should keep the flag flying. As they say, even when there's no wing, keep it flying. We were set up to pursue unity for Nigeria and to pursue excellence in us first. So let's remain united and let's remain excellent. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. We'll stop the recording. I'll keep you for a minute or two, and then I'll let you go, all right? Thank you so much.